This road through Abkhazia will never be able, under current conditions, to replace the one that goes through Verkhny Laz. I believe, by and large, I'm actually omitting a lot of other details here, that this is an initiative to create some kind of black hole for smuggling. This route is truly unsuitable for serious cargo and for the flow of serious cargo, both from an economic and legal standpoint. And from a legal standpoint, I'll tell you, it's not even legally binding. Let's first talk about the fact that no large, serious container company, that is, a company that owns containers, will send its containers along this route because it has to get those containers back. How will it get them back? Who will be the guarantor? Who will insure these cargoes? So, this means that, in the best case, in addition to the fact that this transshipment will occur at some point, from a truck to another truck, and then from this other truck to a train, in addition to this transshipment, the containers must also be cleaned. That is, the goods must be removed from there, put into another container, and the container must be returned to the company from which this cargo arrived, that is, to this terminal. These operations that I am now talking about, they seriously increase the cost of all this, firstly. Secondly, can you imagine the number of containers from the available containers that must circulate along this route? All this costs money. Yes, and all this requires a very serious organization of these transportations and so on. And that's two things. Thirdly, well, now, as they say, that is, legally, it is impossible to do this today. Well, and there is one more thing. So, if we're talking, let's say, today we touched on the transit of goods going to Armenia, yes, let's say, that is, if we use that highway instead of Lars Verkhny, then that's an additional 600 kilometers, if not more, of travel. It's unclear why this is necessary, right? Well, you see, what's the matter? I said again, that's why this route looks and sounds so good if we're talking about, smuggling. This is a real smuggling scheme. And there, I repeat, we're talking about goods from Armenia, from Azerbaijan, from Iran, and so on. Well, from Iran, that's a big, big, big question mark. What kind of goods are they? Where are they supposed to go? How? And so on. From Armenia to Armenia, Azerbaijan. Needs this like a hare needs a stop sign. Yes, yes, yes. There, it's absolutely unprofitable. If you look at the map, from a legal standpoint, it's even unprofitable. Firstly, secondly, who will provide for it? Even if, say, we decide to transport Uzbek cotton, which is stored, for example, somewhere in Azerbaijan, to Russia to the weaving factories in Ivanovo, then we'll use this route. Firstly, why should I do it through this route when Azerbaijan has a direct border with Dagestan? Yes, yes, what about Gerbant and so on? That's one. Secondly, why do we need to do it through this closed route? If, for example, I transport it there, some of the goods will be completely lost during these 3 reloads. Who will be responsible for this? Who will be responsible for this? Well, then there are the security issues themselves. Who is responsible for Abkhazia's status, and who will ensure it? Firstly. Secondly, who will allow these drivers to enter Abkhazia with these vehicles? Who is it that says Georgia will have nothing to do with this route? For God's sake. I'm all for Georgia having nothing to do with this route. I'll say, then who should have a role? You understand? I mean, it's completely unrealistic. But what do I really see in this, right? And so, well, if we turn on a little bit of this, realistic imagination, if we can somehow connect these two words, connect, yes. The phrase, then, yes, it's possible. We're talking about a very deep integration of Russia, that is, the absorption of Russia, the territory of Abkhazia. This will happen, it is happening, but it's happening in a way that I think is happening with the brakes on for now, but the process is ongoing. You know, it's a kind of sliding, a drift. That is, this is a creeping annexation, I would say, I would use that word. Why? Because, all these infrastructure projects that have been effectively sponsored by Russia in recent years, I mean some, very superficial, but still, work on the railway, because it's far from in condition to handle significant quantities of cargo. Oh, and we know about this, by the way, in detail. And the fact that Sukhumi Airport was technically rehabilitated, not particularly extensive work was carried out there either, because, well, I know the state of that airport after the war very well. And a lot has been written about this, so to speak, in specialized publications. And then there's this excitement associated with, new developers who want this in Abkhazia or don't want it. So the occupation regime is actually bringing it to Abkhazia, and in the city of Sukhumi and other places, certain buildings are already being built, and sales of these apartments in these buildings are being conducted in Russia. And the population, coming from the territory of the Russian Federation, is growing every year. I'm not talking about vacationers, I'm talking about people who stay there and then live there. This is a very interesting point, which is happening now in 2025. Few people talk about it, but I'd like to voice it here now. And let's talk about this, this is good, so to speak, food for thought for many. A so-called agreement was signed on how to simplify the process of obtaining Russian citizenship for residents of Abkhazia. And what does this mean? Yes, they can obtain citizenship on the territory of Abkhazia. That is, everything is simplified there. The consular department of the so-called Russian embassy in Abkhazia was expanded both in authority and in terms of numbers, I mean staff and so on. They even assigned representatives of the Ministry of Internal Affairs there so that they could obtain Russian driver's licenses. Yeah, right, Sukhumi and so on. Well, basically, all of this was done. But the most important thing, which few people talk about, is that, if someone receives, Abkhazian citizenship, they are obliged to register for military service in Russia, and they must be drafted into the army from the age of 18 to 30. That is, if you are drafted into the army, you are going to fight in Ukraine. This is what was signed, and, well, what could be even more serious integration and so on. So, this is all called creeping annexation. This is what is happening, so to speak, the harmonization of legislation. Between, that is, Russian legislation and so-called Abkhazian legislation. The fact is that criminal cases initiated in the Russian Federation also have validity in the territory of occupied Abkhazia.
Dario Radio, mudam kargi Daria.